87% of realtors that get into the business get out of the business after 2 years. That does not exist in our world.
We have massive visions around growing our businesses, and we are always looking to add talent to our world. We do everything in our power to ensure the people we surround ourselves with defy the odds, get into production, and build massive lives for themselves.
We have interviewed some of the top realtors in the world. If you're a new realtor, a top producer, or CEO of a mega team, Sales Beast Podcast is your blueprint for success.
With locations all across Canada, reach out to us to talk about partnership and opportunities. We are looking forward to it.
Yes, I'm the boss.
Welcome back to another Sales Beast episode. And today we are joined by some close friends, Colin Campbell, or should I say Sir Colin Campbell, and Gary McGowan. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it. It's always great to be on any platform with my buddy, my business partner, Gary. So it's great to be here, guys. Thank you for having us.
I'm going to clarify that. It's not great to be on any platform. It's great to be on this platform. How's that sound?
I love
it. That's awesome. So, Colin, we've had the pleasure of having you on the podcast. Gary, first time guest, but hopefully avid listener. We'll find out. I'd love to just start with your stories. So, Colin, you have a very impactful story. Gary, I know you do as well. Why don't you just give us a brief intro, Gary, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right. My backstory is probably like many people, they had the opportunity to grow up with parents that owned one or two investment properties. I had the opportunity to grow up in a family that owned many. So I thought it was actually kind of normal when you're 12 or 13 or 16 years old to go paint some bedroom or house that you'll never be in ever again until I was probably in my mid-20s. I thought that was normal. Then I realized, hey, that's not normal. Not many people do own investment properties. So I think I started educating myself on what that meant. And I think in my early 30s, my father said, hey, I'm going to go buy some more properties. And you ever had a moment in your life where you say one sentence and it changes the rest of your life? I said, I'm in. And then now here we are, 18 years later, maybe. So that's kind of where that all started, along those lines of buying a lot of investment properties. That obviously led to myself getting my real estate license, which has led to many, many doors that have been opened, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I think having that opportunity to grow up in a family that valued not only generating wealth, but generating opportunities for others. That's kind of the short story, but we can get into the details of it, but that's the short story of it.
Dude, I love how concise that was and how you pulled that together. Unlike Gary, I didn't grow up in a family that had, investment properties. That was normal for us. Immigrant to Canada, been in the country now, I think coming up on 20 years. However, always knew that I wanted to get into real estate, always knew that I want to build wealth through real estate. I was mentored by so many great authors, alive or dead, leaders that have come before me, and I've always known the path to wealth was through real estate. And early on, I decided this will be my path. So the moment I got here, and I think there's something about being an immigrant in a country where you almost appreciate it more than the people who actually were born there. And being not from here, I came to this country as in, okay, the world, this is it. I can do whatever I choose here. Canada is going to be my slate. And they talk about the American dream. This is my Canadian dream. And while I'm here, I'm going to make the best of it, where I can not just build a great life for myself or my family, but how do I help as many people along the way as I go on this journey? So that has been my path, and our paths, Gary, Pat, and I, we've connected before we started in real estate at Keller Williams. We were investors at RAIN, the real estate investment network. We kind of know of each other. Everybody's like, oh, you need to know Colin, you need to know Gary. And then we started working at Keller Williams in Newmarket. And then is when we were like, oh, you're the guy everyone has been talking about. And that connection has just been there. It was that brotherly connection has been there from day one. So we're coming up on what, 10 or 11 years now, Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah. And since then, we've built together, we've grown together. Gary is a great friend of mine, business partner of mine. I've learned so much from him. I listed his house at one point. Yeah, so there we go.
There's
Hey,
a
who was
funny
a better
story to that.
listing agent, Gary?
Oh,
Yeah.
Me or
we're not
Colin?
getting into that here. There's gonna be beef if we do that.
Yeah.
Two of the people on screen have listed my homes.
Smart.
When I think about you guys, there's this generate, like I would consider me and Anna to be from the same generation in KW, and you guys are a couple gens ahead of us. You're like wise men we've looked up to and known about since the day we got in the business. For me at least, I don't know if Anna feels that way. But Colin, like I know you read a ton of books, you expose yourself to Tony Robbins. I read somewhere, I think in that article you mentioned last time we were on the podcast, Toronto Star, and I read it after. I don't idolize anyone, but I steal ideas from a lot of people and said you read something like 50 books a year, which I think is the average from any CEO. And then Gary, I always see you out there teaching and contributing. You seem to know KW front and back. Why that thirst to acquire knowledge? And then even more than that, why do you guys spend so much time giving it back to all of us? And
Thank you.
whoever
Thank you
wants
for
to
saying all that.
answer
Yeah.
can answer it.
I think there's that whole old saying out there, and every time I hear it, I'm like, yeah, that is so true. The best class or education piece you'll ever attend is the one that you teach, and it keeps me sharp. It keeps me engaged. It keeps me connected with the younger generations, that type of thing. But I think obviously there's you can see a passion in those people that love to share, and it also, you can see a true, it kind of peels the onion away in a lot of things too, right? And it has opened up so many doors that you never, or at least we never anticipated that would get opened. And that's one of the driving forces for me is A, I love teaching. B, you get introduced to so many people that way. And I think everyone should, even if it's completely not in your wheelhouse, you gotta try teaching or educating or supporting each other. It's an amazing opportunity.
And obviously we've seen that from you. I've known that of you for all the years I've known you, Gary. For me, I think my life mantra has always been growth. And that has been who I am from day one. And I will tell you, my biggest personal fear is dying, and I meet the big guy in the sky, and he says, Colin, you could have been all of this. We had this massive table set out for all these things for you to achieve, but you only achieve a sliver of this table. That would be hell for me. That would be my personal hell. So I think it's my personal goal while I'm on this blue rock that spins around is to learn as much as possible and to teach as much as possible. So my experience is I want to share that with as many people so that they don't fall into some of those traps that I've fell into, but also they know that it's been done, and they can get some form of inspiration that, okay, it's been done before, so I can do it. So that is why I'm so passionate about learning and passionate about teaching.
I love it. I want to take a step back to what we were talking about before at the beginning. And I think I relate really well to you, Colin, because I'm also not from Canada. I was not born here. I came with immigrant parents that took a chance, just like you did, on moving our family, our life from one country to another with the hope that there was something better. And so you're 100% right when you said, I find immigrants have a different mindset. They look at Canada as such a land of opportunity. I'm not saying that people from Canada don't, but I think we look at it differently, and there's so many opportunities for sure. Now, thinking about both of your journeys, if we're looking back around where you went from becoming an individual business owner, investor, all the way to now going into leadership, What were some of the pivotal moments throughout your journeys that you can maybe pinpoint that started leading you into the path of leadership?
I will start, Gare. I think.
Good, because I was hoping for easier questions.
Yeah, I was like, where are we going with all of this? But okay, Gary, I'll allow you to think while I go ahead. I think first off, it starts off with surrounding yourself with the right people. Again, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So surrounding myself with like-minded people who will push me and challenge me to be a better person and to think bigger. So that is one that created opportunity as well. Finding a mentor. The people who've done it before us, we just need to go find those people and plug into them. Whether it's a mentor that you know that is in the business, or we can be mentored by people who are already dead and gone. Read their autobiography. We can read a lot of books written by them. So being mentored by people who have done what is it you want to do. And that's how I've lived my life. I think sometimes this can be overlooked because we're in a society where we want things now and we expect everything right now. And we want to be that influencer. We want to go viral. But a lot of the times we forget to put in the hard work. I think hard work, well, they say hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I think putting in that work is so important, and just being disciplined. Because a lot of the times we're going to be motivated in the moment to go out and do something. Oh, I want to lose 5 pounds for this wedding coming up, right? And in the beginning, I'm going to be motivated to do that. But it's the discipline to get up and do it when I don't feel like doing it. So hard work and discipline, I think that goes together. So without taking up too much time, and I see Gary's brain is like he's ready to go. So you can go now, Gary.
I don't know if I could pinpoint some specific moments, but maybe some seasonality over the last, I'm 50 in November of 2023. I'll be 50.
What?
So I can
You're
I can definitely
50?
think back and see seasonality of when I definitely aspired to grow and to lead and to take things on and to take projects on and to take businesses on. But I also, as I get older, I also am now understanding that there's a season where you need to step back and just take a breath, get fit again, as it were, whether that's, physically or mentally fit, meaning take some time away. And that, I think, allows people to not just, we talk about sustaining and moving on up as a sustained path. I think a true entrepreneur will have like major peaks and dip a little bit. And when they dip, they're not dipping because in my brain, they're not dipping because they're giving up. They're dipping because they're sitting on the bench for a moment, right? And they're just taking that water break or that breather, and then they can get back in with much more energy. And that's kind of where I feel that I'm at this moment, where I'm kind of back in the game in a sense with more energy. But I couldn't have done that if I hadn't been aware to take a step back. And I think there's so many, you don't have to be a leader. There's so many people that just don't take the opportunity to take a breather. And you got to, I think, in this day and age, right?
I like what you said about seasons, Gary. That resonated with me. And it's important for all of us to understand what season we're in,
Mm-hmm.
right? Obviously, as a young entrepreneur, you might be in a season of just building. And that's all you're going to do for the next 5 or 10 years. But there's no way you can build for the rest of your life. Like Gary's saying, you got to take a step back, and then resting to recover is different than resting to avoid the day. So like Gary sitting on the sideline where he's resting to recover, he's still coaching his fellow teammates as well, right? And when we talk about season, I think it's doing the right things in the right season will produce success. If we're out and we decide, it's winter outside, and we decide, okay, we're going to start walking around with shorts and t-shirt, most people are going to think, okay, you're crazy, and you can potentially get sick from that. There's so many things that can go wrong. But choosing the right season to do that in, it just makes it much easier. So that really resonated with me, Gary. Thanks for that. I like the season.
Yeah, that's a great analogy for sure.
You reminded me of, you would know this guy, Colin, for sure, Keith Cunningham at the Tony events.
Yes.
Where he says, carve out time in your life just to think. That's
Yes.
something I'm horrible at. I go all the time. I don't think all that much. How do you arrive at a place where you give yourself the space to actually think? Because I find if you do, what I've been told is that if you do give yourself time to think, you can actually move a lot faster than if you are just go like I am today.
I can't remember who said it, but they said, give me 8 hours to chop down a tree. I'm going
Chris Knight on Instagram today.
I'm going to spend the first 7 hours sharpening my axe, right? It might have been Abraham Lincoln or something like that who have said that. After reading one of Keith Cunningham's handbook, The Road Less Stupid, and being a part of his world, I've started to implement that into, The Road Less Stupid. I started to implement that into my world and into my routine. It's challenging doing that every Sunday where I sit in the same chair, in the same office at the same time and just think. And I'm usually asking myself about 3 questions, and I just let my mind roam on that. However, every time I've done that, I've had a seamless week, a successful week where I felt I've gone much further. Why haven't I been doing that every single week? Discipline. I haven't been disciplined in that area. So
when you look at some of the most successful people that have ever stepped foot on the planet, like Bill Gates, for instance, he regularly leaves his family and his business behind and goes to the middle of nowhere. I'm sure it's an ultra luxurious compound and spends time by himself for a week to reflect. And you look at someone like Warren Buffett, who I've read a lot of his stuff. It sounds like the majority of his day is just spent reading and thinking. And you look at how far and how fast they had the ability to go. It's incredible. Sometimes in our office, I see Sandy. He's just in the corner. And in my head, I'm thinking, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, I'm out here crushing listings all day long. You're just sitting there. But he's the visionary. And me signing a listing, fantastic. But him setting the course for the whole organization truly brings us somewhere special.
absolutely.
I think for myself, I just haven't reached a maturity level yet where I can do that at a high level, but something to aspire to for sure.
Well, I think Mike too, it comes with, not to say it's maturity, but at where I remember where I was when I was your age, I was energetic to go build a business or build. But now that I'm older, I now have trained my mind to think and do everything else. At least I think I have. But I wouldn't be able to go back on some of those experiences if I didn't go through them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like that journey in life in a sense, right? And some of us learn lessons faster than others, and I'm a terrible slow learner, so it takes me a while. But I think about, people ask me, why do I go bike riding or mountain bike riding for like 2 or 3 or 4 hours by myself? That's my thinking time. Like I go, I get a workout in, but man, do I ever let my mind wander? And it's sometimes I'm scared where it goes, and other times I'm excited.
Yeah. I think too, leverage ties into that a lot too. Like you guys have put yourself in a place where you have people or foot soldiers. Like I'm almost a foot soldier here, where the leader of this company can have time and space to plan because I'm the one boots on the ground turning out the deals. I guess it's probably just part of the journey.
Understanding the season, right? And right now you're in spring, I guess, where you're planting.
Yeah.
yes, it's going to be a lot of hard work where you're tilling that soil, you're watering that, you're planting that seed, you're watering, you're fertilizing. So yes, that requires work. And as and speaking of age and season, Gary's now at that season where he's now mentoring, right? And he's developing the next leaders, right? This is where I get the benefit from that.
I love that. I think that analogy around the seasons is so important too. What is that book? The Fourth Turning?
Yes. Yeah.
Fourth Turning is kind of related to that, and just what even economy is happening right now. And I think we're in a winter type of season for our economy, but we have to understand, like, personally also what our own seasonal changes are like.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pivot a little bit and chat about your podcast, because you guys have a very unique name, the Not So Black and White Podcast, and you've had some amazing guests as well. So we're going to actually ask you guys how you guys got those guests, but tell us a little bit about your podcast. What caused you guys to start it? We're in a similar boat. We have a podcast too. I want to know what your overall vision was when you first launched that.
I think it's when, I don't remember the date, but I remember what I was reading. And I was reading Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And that came out in December. And I think it was end of December, early January. Gary called and he's like, dude, I got a great idea. Let's start a podcast. And I'm thinking, and he started saying, he spent like 5 minutes explaining why it's going to be great. And I was like, let's just do it. And he's like, what? And I was like, yes, let's just do it. Because the goal, and from his vision, it's we're going to be bringing information to as many people as possible. We're a part of a world where it's normal for us to invest. It's normal for us to talk about wealth. It's normal for us to talk to great leaders. How many people don't have access to that? So how do we bring that to the masses? So for me, and because I was reading that book, it was just about taking action at that point. It doesn't matter, say yes, and we'll figure it out. And we committed to yes, and then the rest is history. Gary will tell you how we came up with the name and how we stumbled through success. But I think it's success favors the bold. And the moment you start taking action, Lady Luck decides to smile on you. And then we find successes, in our journey.
The when you always hear an idea, like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that one day. And that one day, I think I can't remember if it was 2017 or 2018, maybe 2017. Doesn't matter. That day came where that phone call happened. And as Colin said, I explained what I wanted it to look like. And at the time, there might have been just a handful of podcasts out there, but why add more noise to what's already out there? Well, I don't care. You like you guys launched a few years ago. There's still people and an audience that you have and an audience that you serve. And that's the way we looked at it too. And we knew when it came down to naming it that it had to be unique. Most of everyone knows our sense of humor. I love a good joke every time I can speak, right? And we knew we wanted to play off, black and white or what have you. And we came up with the Black and White Real Estate Podcast. I told my wife, and Michelle, my wife, says, without skipping a beat, you guys are not so black and white. And now, like, that's it. That's the name of the podcast. And we've had people on. In fact, I can remember a few people on, even within the last year. It was, we're at different events and we sit them down and they don't even know the name of the podcast until, our little intro starts and you're on the Not So Black and White Real Estate Podcast. And you just see them start to laugh and like chuckle to themselves. Right. So it's kind of one of those things that plays on words, but I got to tell you guys, probably like you and Mike have found out, it has opened doors that maybe we weren't even looking at before, right? Like, yeah, we know they're there, but you're just not in tune with them, right? And when it comes to how do we get certain guests on, being bold enough to ask them, or maybe naive enough, or sometimes stupid enough, we'll say it like that. And I gotta tell you, here's where it's important to have the right business partner, one that's going to push you to do things you don't want to do. And Colin knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I think I even know what you guys are talking about. Family reunion, is this what we're
Family
talking
reunion. We can get into it if you like, but yeah, that was something that was so far out of the comfort zone of myself on how we made it happen. I'll set it up like that. You want to dig into it, we can dig into it. If not, we move on.
I think
I'm
it's just,
wondering
let's
what
just
it
say,
is. So like,
well, yeah,
I
let's
imagine
just,
people listening are wondering what it is. Also, what happened?
let's just say the audacity is real and I freaking love it. I'll let you guys tell us what happened. For the people listening, don't get any ideas. I'm sure security at family reunion has increased tenfold since you guys were there. But I think that was the most ballsy thing that I've ever seen done. And you guys came out at the end of it so successful with it. So tell us what happened.
Well, I think it's about taking risks and also about sometimes breaking the rules. I'm not encouraging anyone to go break the law in any way, but sometimes breaking the rules. And we had a vision of how do we take our podcast to family reunion? And for those of you who don't know what family reunion is, it's Keller Williams event. It's a real estate event, one of the largest events. So you have about 15 to 17,000 agents there. And we're like, how do we bring this to that event? We knew it's something we wanted to do. We weren't sure how we could do it. So we decided we'll just pack everything up and take it. And as Gary and I are somewhat having these conversations, yeah, let's just ship everything down in California, and then we'll set up. And the more we talk about it, we realize what a crazy idea it is. It will never work. And because we thought it was such a crazy idea, we're like, then that means nobody's ever done this before. So we have to do it. So Gary, this is where I hand it off to you.
So it's not like we've not done events before. We've done events, and you guys have been at some of those events alongside of us, right? And for our podcast, we do the whole, obviously we have the microphones, but we have the cameras and the lights and everything else. So it's just not like, hey, we can pop up in a corner and no one's going to notice us. People tend to notice. So we pack everything up, we get there. And part of my background before real estate is staging, and staging means, setting up events and doing lights and sound and audio and video. So I have that background, and I'm looking at this, and we got to get ourselves into the events. Again, this is 15,000 people. There's, for those to paint the picture, you have all the auditoriums where all the breakout sessions are, but you also have something called like the marketplace where all the vendors are. And that's where we knew we wanted to be. We're walking in there before the event started, and we're looking around, and people are setting up, and we just walked right in. People assumed we were part of the setup crew. And I look at one of the sections, and my mind was blown. And this is where you start to see the stars align for us, in a sense. This is the first time ever KW International has hosted something called Radio Row. And Radio Row, for those that are curious, is really just a line, 4 or 5 individuals or businesses that had podcasts, and they invited them to come. And we weren't on that list because they didn't know about us. And now they do, trust me. And we said to ourselves, well, if we're going to be anywhere, we got to be on Radio Row. So we go look at it. And of course, all the booths are already assigned. And if you've ever been in events before, you know that every square inch of an event is marked out and allotted for somebody. Well, because of my background in staging, I kind of knew what to do, but I didn't want to do it but I had a friend that pushed me. I'm like, why don't we just set up a booth? So we set up the booth with like the curtains and the dividers and everything. And we set up our sign, and then we walked away. Then the next morning we set up all of our gear, and it looked legit, looked professional, looked like it's supposed to be there. Everything, from the lights, the microphones to what have you, the cameras. And then we go on our merry way. I'm sweating bullets. I can't even eat. And we go to one of our first sessions, and we had met our neighbors who were awesome people. And they send me a text and basically said, the event coordinator is looking for you guys. Blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, here we go. What did we get? They want your phone number. Like I said to Colin, we can't give them our phone number.
No.
we got to go have a face-to-face conversation. Like, who's going to believe some guy on a phone? So we go have our face-to-face conversation, and over what, a 24-hour period,
Yep.
Colin, we negotiated.
Yep.
And really, we spoke from the heart. We spoke why we're there. A lot of the other vendors were there as vendors to pitch and to sell something. And our story was, we wanted to share the great news of KW and interview as many people as we possibly could. And to make a long story short, and a few people that we had in our corner that had the ear of KW International and corporate went to bat for us, and we are forever grateful, or at least I am tremendously so. And that's there's many more details to it, but to cut it short, that's kind of how it happened. And I got to tell you, it was probably one of the best experiences that we've had together. That the legend of the podcast will live on because of it. But it's one of those things that sometimes you just got to step out, at least for me. And as you know, we're talking here about being a leader or being an individual, an entrepreneur. You got to get out of your comfort zone. Like, it's plain as day. And because of that, and if you don't have someone pushing you to do that, we would have never met any of those guests that we had.
Some of the guests that we had, there's no way you can get access to them. But I think even that journey in itself, it mirrors the entrepreneurial journey, where sometimes you just have to take risks. You have to take those risks, calculated risks, one might argue, but you have to take the risk where the reward outweighs the consequences of it. And also, I remember us owning up to our faults and say, you're right, guys, we screwed up. We shouldn't have been here. This was a bold move on our part. And we fell on our own sword, but we were genuine. It was from the heart. And we asked for forgiveness. We asked, how do we be a part of this? The goal is not to be profitable here. How do we be a part of this? And it was just us being real and authentic with them. Why, we were granted so many favors, and it really mirrors the role of an entrepreneur. So sometimes, yes, we have to take risks, and we admit our faults, and we continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget one of the senior leadership icons, if you will, in the KW world, took us aside and said to us, "Hey," they slapped our wrists, right? Trust me. And then he went on to say, "Here's the good news. There's everyone here now knows you. Here's the bad news. Now everyone here knows you. Don't screw it up." Like, we took that message and we ran with it.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love hearing the story behind it, because I got to witness it firsthand, and we were all like, what are they thinking? But at the same time, like you both said, you have to take risks, and that just shows how you guys are, not only personally, but professionally in your businesses and your lives. So thank you for sharing that. Mike, I think I told you that story, but this is the full context.
That's the first time I ever heard it. It reminds me, my favorite movie when I was a kid was Catch Me If You Can with Leo. It reminds you guys are like the guy sitting up in front of the college classroom teaching anthropology class.
Absolutely.
I guess you look like you belong. You can get away with anything.
And it's funny because I learned that back in Guyana, where you act like you belong there, nobody will question you. And I don't know, it's just been in my DNA from birth, where you act like you belong, nobody will question you. Mm-hmm. So we're walking there and everyone assumed we belong. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and we were treated as such.
So oh, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was going to say there's many little tidbits of stories in there. You can ask us offline, or people can come up to us offline. There's some funny events that happened along that way for those 72 hours or whatever it was. But yeah, it's good. It's good.
So for anyone that's now interested in listening to your podcast, which I'm sure there's lots of them after hearing that story, who did you guys meet and interview during that experience?
I would say we interviewed some of the top leaders in Keller Williams leadership. Like some of the top leaders who are usually not on podcasts, we got them for 20 minutes, half an hour. So it was very rewarding. And obviously the goal is never to profit from any of this. We were able to now share that information with so many people.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys
So
find that like well, we're both in the podcasting world. Do you guys find that now putting yourselves into almost like a systematic format of consistently interviewing people over a long period of time just gets you into the habit of just having great conversations and like asking good questions? I think that's one of like the biggest things that I got out of having a podcast now for 4 years.
You know what? That is so true. However, the podcast has led to so much for both Gary and I,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was the first time we actually worked together on an actual project. Yeah, maybe I've covered his business while he was away or sold his home, but now we worked on a project together. And the relationship that we've built over the years, just being side by side, I've got a greater understanding on how Gary thinks, how he asks certain questions. I was like, wow, I love the way he does that. So it almost challenges me now to up my game, right? So we're sharpening each other's skills and we're pushing each other to get better. However, when I took over the ownership of the Keller Williams Market Center, the brokerage, that there was just a great pre-game for what we have set up right now. And without that pre-game, I don't think we would have seen the successes that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way with Mike. Like we're constantly challenging each other to grow. And if I hear him asking a great question, I'm like, oh God, now I have to like one up that somehow, right? I love that.
Well, here's the
Definitely
reality of it.
builds.
Sorry, Mike,
Sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah. The reality of it is you get hosting a podcast or whatever it is, even interviewing somebody at a coffee, right? Over a coffee, you start to realize all the preamble, just skip it, right? And ask the question. And then you're able to like, it's definitely a skill. If you're not working on that skill, it gets rusty, you know? And one of the favorite things that we've kind of found ourselves doing is doing podcasts at events, because that generates some unique interest, but it also the speakers or the guests that want to come on, they're heightened as well. Like they come in almost, not to say prepared, but they're like excited to be there and everything else. And definitely doing the live events has been a lot of fun for us. Definitely a lot of fun for us.
I think it builds, what I was going to say, it builds credibility for the host of the podcast. And I'm not saying that because I have a ton of credibility. I'm saying because I was on the other side of it. I came through podcasts. The only reason I'm here is breakthrough podcasts. And I remember making the phone shaking, thinking, will this celebrity guy answer the phone and assist me in buying a house? And when I showed up, the trust was already built. He didn't know me from Adam, but it was Sandy, the guy I listened to every day on the way to work. And boom, he sold me a house in a day. And then I left my job, came to work for him. Wow. Like there's so many little things like that come through hosting something like this. And I find like personally too, there was this, I've always done this, but I heard it formalized for me during Jeff Glover event I went to. He does the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday podcast. And my theory, or the reason I jumped on that, when I wake up in the morning, I'm an incredibly negative person at times, just like everyone. And I'm only 34 years old, so I have limited life experience. I have so much to learn. So I can immediately shut the negativity off and draw from others that have more life experience and are probably not filming their podcasts at 4 a.m. in the morning. So probably far better attitude than I do. And it's a total game changer. So I don't even give myself a second. Wake up, press the button, and listen. And just like the joy you get out of life and the focus is next level. And I see myself smiling through this whole experience now. You guys can literally have that every single morning. You just press the button and listen to the content put out for free.
I think what it is, it's just, whether it's podcasts or anything, just building with somebody else. Because in school, we were taught to figure this out on your own. Here's an exam, you have to figure that out on your own. Do not talk to your neighbor. Well, that's how I went to school in Guyana's British system. You know, you learn alone. But in the real world, in the business world, we don't succeed alone. We're always taking people with us, or we're all doing it together as a group. What would it look like in schools? And I don't know, I'm not saying we need to go change the schooling system right now. Actually, yes, I'm saying that. However, it's, what if we were in class, we're like, okay, now let's collaborate on this assignment and let's have a massive collaboration. Gary, you're really good at organizing and numbers. Colin, you're good at cleaning up after. Mike, you're good at this. Now, when we come together, we can build a massive company where Anna is now the CEO. And we did it together versus each one of us trying to go do it on our own. And then, you know, we have mediocre success, right?
It's the whole who, not how principle. I love
Absolutely.
that book, and I love that
Yes.
principle. I think it's helped all of us build in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Gary before we move on, what is realty chatter?
That is a great question, and I'm so glad you asked that, Anna.
I see it behind you, and I see it on your hat, so I had to
Yeah.
talk about it.
Shameless plug. I like it. I like it. It's simply a real estate website, for one, where I host all of my YouTube videos and so forth. And it was just a way to collect them all and put them all in one spot. You can find our podcast there as well, and a number of other different things. But one of the things I love doing is creating content, obviously. And I do that through YouTube videos. And I learned quickly that I enjoy interviewing over, the selfie, putting a video camera in front of me and talking for 15 minutes. I can do it, but it's much more fun to engage with somebody else on camera. And I do a number of different interviews outside the podcast, whether it's, a local paralegal that understands investment properties, lawyers that understand how to save your clients and all that type of thing. We do a Calgary real estate update, Vancouver real estate update, of course, here local in Toronto. And it's just a space where we can create education for people and able, it allows them to connect with those professionals as well.
That's amazing. I gotta say, I just found out this week that our onboarding team has been using some of your training videos as part of our onboarding. And so we were just shadowing some of the onboarding process to see what we needed to tweak. And I was like, oh, that's scary. I didn't even know he's part of our onboarding, but I guess he is. So you're creating really useful material that, lots of people I'm sure are using out there, especially us. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, the bill's in the mail, by the way.
Okay, I'll wait for the letter.
I think that's when you know
right?
you're
There's so many ways we as realtors or entrepreneurs can give back. Right. And I get that. And I get that message every single day. Hey, I saw your video. I used it for this, or I helped the client, or even a client of mine obviously watched it. Like it's just a tremendous way to give back. And if you're not giving back in any form, I urge you to give back, because it'll come back tenfold. That's not why I do it. I do it because I enjoy it, obviously. Right.
Of course.
That's incredible. I think that's the best part about this company is everyone shares, and you hear little stories like the one Anna just told. The extent of my onboarding when I got here was go sit with Chris Knight and his team, figure it out. But that's something I teach in our office. That you're gonna hear a lot of things that come out of my mouth, but there are way smarter people in the world that go elsewhere to get your information. That's something I think I did really well when I got into this business. You be a sponge, and if you look, you don't need to look very hard. There's information everywhere, and people who have done what you want to do and way bigger things than you could ever dream of doing, that are willing to help you. Like what you said earlier, Colin, how your life has just been finding people who are where you want to be almost reverse engineering what they've done.
Absolutely. Because like we all think that where we want to go, it's just unique to us. Doesn't matter. It's been done before, right? We just need to go find who's done it and plug into that person. And we will turn decades of learning into maybe 1 or 2 years or months, right? We'll just compress those because now we're learning from somebody else.
Mhm.
And I think that's my hat.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, R&D, rip off and duplicate. But
Yes, yes.
I love what we do in a lot of the KW training courses at the beginning is I don't know if you guys remember this, but it's like, are you going to be the vacationer, the explorer, or are you going to be the prisoner? And I find a lot of people in this industry tend to be either a prisoner or vacationer. They don't necessarily know what to learn, where to find information, or are not seeking. But the explorers are the ones that grow the fastest. They're the ones that also grow the biggest because they're constantly curious and seeking out new information. And you guys
Absolutely.
are obviously some explorers.
Definitely. Definitely. I was sharing with an agent yesterday, and I bet you do this too, Mike, for your listings and when you're teaching listing presentations. And I said to them, they were concerned that they didn't know enough. And I said, trust me, when you go to a listing presentation, just assume that you are not the smartest person in that meeting, right? That home seller or that client probably knows more about their home than you do or their street. And it was kind of that aha moment for that person. But I didn't learn that just by knowing it. I had to experience that myself, right? Be put in my place a few times in order to get that happen. But I think that's the best way to do it. Be curious, the old Ted Lasso thing, right? Be curious, be curious, be curious for sure.
Don't need to know.
Absolutely.
Need to do. Take
Yeah.
action.
Yeah.
There was this thing, this ties into seeking out mentors and getting people in your corner that actually want to help you. I heard this thing, it was about Warren Buffett and Ben Graham. So when Buffett was a young man, he went to Ben Graham and said, can you help me learn how to invest? And Ben Graham said, it would be a waste of my time. Well, I'm willing to do it for free. Yes, but what you don't understand is I make X every single hour, some outrageous number. If I invest in you, I'm losing that. It's not worth my time. Fortunately for Buffett, he ended up helping him. But I was on a webinar a couple of weeks ago with Nate Brower. We've had him on this podcast. He's an absolute rock star, an amazing person. He's solo. It sounds like he's got some admin around him. And the question that I had in my head, he's not opposed to helping. He's an amazing guy. Why does someone in that market not just go and say, hey, Nate, I got a listing here, you take it. Hey, Nate, I got another one, just take it. Hey, if you add value to his life, like truly add value to his life, you're going to catch someone like that, catch their attention. And they'll be forced to help you. Like that's, I think for me, like Sandy was forced to help me. I made him too much money for him not to help me. You really need to flip it on its head. Like so many people are wondering, how can I take from Colin or Gary? How do you pound value into them to the point where they have no choice but to give you everything?
That's well said, man. That is well said. That's exactly it.
So anyone out east of Toronto, start giving Nate listings. You want to be mentored by him, and give these two right here listings or whatever they desire. And they will help you.
Well, and that's the important piece, is finding out what perhaps that mentor or that person needs. Forget what they require. What do they need, right? And if you talk about that reverse engineer it, well, that's reverse engineering it. Yeah. And like you said, Mike, Sandy had to help you. He had to do something to kind of set you in a path for success, but also to create more opportunity, right?
It's pretty simple to arrive at. Like it's very rare that someone asks themselves the question, what does the person on the other side of the table want? To me, I don't know exactly what he wants, but I assume he wants to be profitable. He's got an amazing wife. I assume he wants to be able to provide her with a good life. So Mike, if you want his attention, you do everything you can to provide Sandy and Kate with an amazing life. Make that your mission, and we'll come back to you tenfold. Yeah, something to think about.
100%. I was just going to start wrapping some things up, but before we get there, I have two questions. Number one, why, sir? I feel like I've asked you this question before. Why Sir Colin Campbell? I always forget and people always ask me. So why the Sir?
The next podcast I'll answer it. So that
Oh.
means you can invite me back.
Fine. Okay, last question then. So who do you guys know that we should have on the Sales Beast podcast?
Who's that?
Who's that? You know who would be really entertaining for you or enlightening, because he has a really, really big business, and I'm stalling because I'm trying to remember his specific name, but he went and bought, help me out here, Colin, Rem magazine not too long ago. And
Andrew
Foliato is, here's somebody that saw an opportunity for a Canadian real estate magazine who decided to close its doors, and he said, no way, I'm taking that and I'm going to make it better than it ever was. And he really, really has. And he's got some really, really great ideas. They've already done some really cool stuff with that magazine. So Andrew Foliato for sure.
Yeah.
That's a great suggestion for sure.
Yeah, we could share his contact as well. You can reach out to him. He also has a podcast. So it's, yeah.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Well, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast with us again and catching up. Obviously, lots of stuff happening in your world as well as ours. So can't wait to have you guys back on maybe in a year or two and see what has changed.
Thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day